What's going on, entrepreneurs, small business owners, and side hustlers everywhere? To get into the Seven Figures Club, which is the top 5% of business owners everywhere, we brought a guest on today, Erik Cabral. And Erik is an amazing entrepreneur. What he is he's an expert when it comes to building a personal brand. He left corporate America after 20 plus years, jumped headfirst into real estate investing in order to achieve financial freedom. He educated himself. He built networks. He analyzed hundreds of deals. He purchased his first multifamily building in less than a year. And since then, he's really become an entrepreneur who has helped others build their brand through podcasting. So he built a podcast media agency, On Air Brands, which is obviously an amazing company that helps. It's building different shows. He's a part of circles like Entrepreneur Circle, Capital Hacking. My good friend MC, Cashflow Ninja, love MC, love his show, been on there a couple times, and VaynerMedia's Chief Heart Officer, Cloud Silver Show. So this is a guy who is well connected in these massive brand circles out there with social media. He understands investment, he understands freedom, and we've got a story that I'm going to ask Erik to share that he shared at the event that I met him at, which was so epic. And somehow my wife walked out in the middle. She had to go to the bathroom. I'm like, honey, this was your story. But anyway, you guys, stay tuned. Erik, welcome to the podcast.
There are over 32 million businesses in the US, and over 90% of them will never break 7 figures in annual sales. So how do we as entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs break into that 7 figures club? This podcast will relentlessly share the secrets, strategies, and tactics I've used to create 3 multi-7 figures businesses and bring in even more successful entrepreneurs than me to share their inspirational stories and tactics to success. You can create your dream business and life right now. So buckle up and let's go.
Thank you, Leo. And I appreciate you not going through my entire bio there. It's too much. It's way too much. I was on a show recently and the host I was like, you didn't have to do all that, man. That was, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, we're excited to have you today. Erik, I always love to start these out and get some of this background. So this is interesting. I feel like a lot of people that go into entrepreneurship and that are business owners and very independent minded, you were a part of corporate America for a long time. And I've always said there are massive opportunities in being an entrepreneur, kind of like a Bob Iger, who, by the way, just took over Disney again today. That was a good move, by the way. But then there's entrepreneurship, where you take all the risks. So 20 years in corporate America, what was it that kind of eventually led you to say, all right, I'm out. I got to be independent. I got to start my own thing. What was it that led you down that path? Because that's a big decision after 20 plus years.
It wasn't the first time. I tried to do something during that period of time, during the 20 plus years. I started a video game company, specifically in the tournament space, where I would gather a bunch of people and sell competition like seats. You had to earn your way to play in the game, and then it would be tournaments, and the top 3 prizes went awarded to the winners there. And we did that for a little while. It was my first endeavor before the internet, where you actually had to go to a brick and mortar to start your business. And I went to SCORE here in New Jersey. I can't remember exactly what that stands for, but it's a small business sort of administrative and a mentorship program. And then they helped me create the LLC and all that stuff. And I remember back in the day, Leo, they actually gave me a stamp. It was it would press into the paper, not too dissimilar from a wax seal, except you could punch the name of the company, which was Playmerica, into the paper. And it was established, 2000 and whatever it was, 2 or 3. Yeah. It's really cool. They don't give those out anymore when you start a company.
That's really cool.
But it failed mostly due to my hesitancy and fear of the competition, which was Xbox going live, PlayStation going live on gaming. And I was like, I don't want to compete. I'm out of here. And then it really wasn't until I climbed the corporate ladder. I was always hesitant to take a managerial position. I just wanted to be creative. That's what I love to do. I want to design logos and all the fun stuff. And finally I stepped into, I think when I was about to have kids, I was like, oh yeah, I need to take this role and accept the responsibility. And the more money was also helpful. So it wasn't until they were laying me off, brother. They were going to lay me off and they said, hey, we need your help. We can't afford to just lay everyone off. So can you lay everyone off in phases and let them know that they no longer have a job after being in here for like, some of them were there forever, like their entire careers, like 20 years there. And I had to lay them off, and then the last person to leave would be me. So that whole picture and that whole process really scared me to think like, wow, I'm expendable big time. Like I helped them turn this $500,000 business into a $2.5 million business with the team that I helped to build. And I just felt used, and that was it, man. That was the catalyst for me to explore new options.
Unbelievable. So you've been there, you invested everything that you had, you're being creative, you've helped it grow. A lot of your team has helped it grow. And then they're like, hey, Erik, thanks for all your help. Can you just carefully, fire everybody? And then when it's all said and done, maybe you can fire yourself. Thanks for your service, kind of like that. And you realize, well, this is no way to live. I need to have control. So once you made that decision and you pulled the trigger, what was the first thing you did, and what's going through your mind? What's going through your family's mind? Like what's the next step there?
Yeah. Well, I'm blessed to have a wife that supports me in all my mad ideas. The only one she didn't support me in was trying to become a professional poker player. That I thought was exciting. I always wanted to do some rock star. I'm a musician, so I was like, yeah, it's like everything that looked like being a rock star, including how we met, like I was on stage. So like I love stages in any capacity, whether I'm playing the drums or singing, whatever. But it was really just the appetite to do something different, because I was always in the creative industry. And I evolved as a person and as an employee and an entrepreneur, as you mentioned earlier. And but I wanted it to be outside of what I had already experienced. I was like, what can I do that's different? So as I started to explore this, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Robert Kiyosaki, that book that he wrote, found its way to me. And I think at the time, dude, I thought it was the universe. I thought, but now I realize the universe was the algorithm. The algorithm saw me Googling, how to get rich, probably is what I Googled. I have no idea. But it was like, you could do stocks.
He's going to love
you could do real estate. Yeah, he's going to love this book. And then the ad came up. I bought the book, listened to the audio while driving to the job that was no longer going to be mine. And I was literally just angered and just frustrated, but mostly inspired to do something, dude. I wanted to change my course. I didn't, I got a job offer already. So I was always fine when these situations occurred. So it wasn't that I was worried about getting another job. I was worried about just being on the hamster wheel and doing the same thing over and over and over, not feeling like I was truly growing. So I asked my wife, hey, I read this book. I'm really inspired by it. He got rich off real estate, and I think that's what I want to do. And she was like, you know nothing about real estate. What do you plan on doing? I'm like,
you know nothing, Jon Snow.
yeah, exactly. So she allowed me the space and time, and she came to me to some conferences and realized, yeah, let's take the risk. Let's try it. And that's what opened the whole world and the doors to other opportunities. And I went back to creative eventually, without first going. I had to become a real estate investor first. Yeah.
Nice. And with investing, it sounds like what are the property types that you found a lot of opportunity in over the years? It sounds like multifamilies up there.
Yeah, multifamily was my first endeavor. I jumped into the fix and flip sort of, it's all cool and sexy. But then I realized that there was an economies of scale here, where it's the same amount of effort can be done and you would make more money. And then if you hire some other people to manage your property. So that all worked. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And during that journey, I met a lot of wonderful people, had other opportunities. As I mentioned to you and the crew over at BDC, big shout out to Sean and Lacey. They that we own the second oldest winery in the country called Renault, which we're blessed. It also came with a golf course, a full 19 holes. And it also, is it 18? I'm not a golf player, clearly, but also has a 50-room hotel that we renovated. And then that was kind of like where I rested my laurels. I was like, I'm finding a lot of work over here at On Air Brands and a lot of people that I need to serve and a ton of clients that I'm meeting. And yeah, that's currently what I've been doing. And yeah, plan to do more, but at this point.
Wow. Well, wait a second. So just to clarify, you're saying you got involved with a big project that included a hotel and a golf course then?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. Came one of the sort of the owners and the GP there, and just learned a ton while we were developing and adding value to that project. Raising capital, starting a podcast to help raise capital and build relationships. All of that stemmed from just jumping into real estate, and then the podcasting sort of came after.
Nice. And so there you are, you're building your real estate empire. And then you're like, how can we, get more capital? How can we build our real estate empire a little bit better? Well, hey, what if we start a podcast? What if we do this? What if we do that? One thing leads to another, and all of a sudden On Air Brands is born. So what was the idea behind On Air Brands, and what has it evolved into?
So On Air Brands was a traditional creative agency, taking all my lessons and my skill sets from corporate America, which, I appreciate what happened in corporate America. I learned a ton and gained a lot of experience, knowledge, and confidence to go out on my own. If it wasn't for those opportunities, I would probably still be at a desk, trying to figure out how to keep my job. So it was really all I knew. And that's what I kind of went back to after I got, like my first project under my belt in terms of a multifamily. And at the same time, I was, had side hustles, which was logos and branding and marketing. One of my good buddies who was also my partner in Play America, the earlier company, he had a company already developing websites. So we kind of joined forces. So my clients would need him, and then we kind of like, we're loose partners, developing websites and doing logos and branding, and then eventually social media marketing. So that was On Air Brands. That was On Air Brands for a couple of years until I started my podcast, Leo, and then everything started to change from there. Like, I did not know that was going to be the business. I thought I was going to do traditional stuff.
Good stuff, Erik. So I think this is important for the audience to pay attention. We have a lot of people out there who have already gone full time with their business, but a lot of other people who are they're at a crossroads. They're not sure, should I quit the job? Should I go all in? Should I keep side hustling? And I think for a lot of people, a lot of the more successful business owners actually keep their day job, while they're building their side hustle. And then eventually, for example, Sarah Blakely starts Spanx. She's still selling, I want to say, fax machines and printers door to door in Georgia. And then eventually, 2, 3, 4 years later, finally goes full time with Spanx, becomes a $1 billion brand, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of success in doing that. For you, what made you comfortable to take the plunge and go full time, with On Air? Was it the fact that you had done the side hustle for long enough to know that there was a market there? What are some of the steps you think that the audience, people should follow before making that decision to go all in with their business?
It's opportunities, right? They present themselves, and we have to recognize when those opportunities are there. And there's going to be a point, and there was definitely a point in my trajectory where I had to say yes to everything, especially leaving corporate America. I had a very healthy, plus six-figure plus salary. So I had to figure out ways to replace that salary. It doesn't happen overnight. So yes to everything and everyone that came my way. And some of those were side hustle logos and branding while I was investing, while I was looking for properties. And investors were the people that I was around every day. And they would see the work I was doing for my own company, my own real estate investing company. And they go, "Oh, who does your logos, your marketing, your branding, your social media?" I'm like, "That's all me." they're like, oh, can you help me do it too? So that's kind of like how it started to grow. And then I realized I can't do this by myself. So I had to start hiring like 1 and then 2 and then 3 people to help me. Eventually started to rebuild what I had built in corporate America, which is a creative agency. And it was sort of through necessity, right? I had to do it because the money was there, the money was good. And I was also building a reputation in that community as like a creative person, a unicorn, they called me, in a space of data-driven left brain thinkers, right? They're all analytical. There's no one there doing what I'm doing. So that was like, wow, this is a blue ocean. This is a blue ocean. Yeah.
Yes. And guys, if you've not read the book, Blue Ocean Strategy that Erik just referred to, highly recommend you do. One of the strategies that is becoming not optional anymore, but a requirement in 2022 as we go into 2023 is building a powerful and effective personal brand. You're an expert at it and you help people do it every day. What are some of the things to think about or steps to take in creating that powerful and effective personal brand? And what happens if you don't?
Yeah. So good. Thank you for that. If you're out there and you're like, man, what's, personal brand? I don't even know what that is. It's basically your online reputation. So what you want to do, and back in the day, your reputation was really handshakes and around coffee, make sure that you don't screw anyone over and you take care of all your clients and customers. And over time, people will start to talk about you, recommend you to their friends and their partners and family. And all of a sudden you have a great reputation. That was like the old school way. But now, how do we do it? We do it through content. We do that online. We do that not just through websites and our social media channels, but I think a podcast is one of the most wonderful vehicles to deliver your message on a consistent basis, because it forces you to create content versus like if you didn't have a podcast, you're like, I don't feel like doing a live today, or I don't feel like writing a post. Well, what I love about having a podcast is that you're going to record, you have to record, or else you will pod fade is what we call it in the industry. You can't get past 8 or 10 episodes. So all that energy and all that brain work for nothing, right? But once you get onto the path and you're starting to create this, now it's an engine. It's a machine that's just chopping up that interview or that solo cast every single week and doing the work for you, like spreading your message while you're asleep and selling for you while you're asleep. So this is a wonderful way to kind of syndicate yourself and create the digital breadcrumbs that lead to you in order for people to continue doing business or even be aware. Like I always recommend, you have to have brand awareness campaigns running constantly and create evergreen content. Then at the same time, you can inject other types of strategies. But at the very least, people should know that you exist and know what you do. And if you don't, and I'll pause here, but I know you had 2 parts to that question, but there's the, if you don't, what will happen?
Yeah, no question. But just to kind of, point out some important factors here that Erik's mentioned. When I was in Miami at this amazing summit, we're right there on South Beach at La Fontainebleau, this epic hotel right there on the ocean there in the Atlantic in Miami Beach. And Erik is there and he's dropping these amazing value bombs. And one of the most powerful moments of that, and it was actually your story, which we're going to get into in a minute, you and your wife. But before that, you talked about, listen, guys, there are millions of podcasts going on around the world. But when you actually unpacked it and broke it down, the consistent ones that are actually really doing it consistently, like it was very minuscule. What was that percent? I mean, it was super small. The actual amount of podcasts you're really competing against, because most people start them, they don't stick to it. They don't go through it long enough to kind of quote unquote find their voice and build that network. Break some of that data down in terms of the opportunity that's still around that people don't seem to get with podcasts.
Yeah, people get intimidated. I often get that question, Leo, like, what, how, I heard there's millions of podcasts. And yes, technically there are, 2.8, it's always growing. Let's call it 3 million podcasts, 4 million podcasts, doesn't matter. So yes, that's an intimidating number. But one of the things I do respond, how I respond to that sort of limiting belief is when you walk into Barnes and Noble or when you scroll on Amazon and you see all the books that are available, but it's more effective if you actually walk into a library or a store and you could see the thousands, if not millions of of books. No one ever walks in and says, I'm not going to write a book. It's just everything's been written, everything. Well, the things that people say about books, and everyone has a story in them, is that no one is telling your story from your perspective and your experience and the lessons learned. So it's the same exact thing with podcasts. You know, when the numbers that you're talking about, I basically broke down how many Apple produces, which is, let's just cut that in half to say 2 million or 1.5 million. And then you cut that in half when you talk about the active ones, and they're active. What they consider active is a podcast was released in the past 90 days. One. So that's crazy. That to me is not a successful podcast. That is not consistent at all. So then I said, let's narrow it down even more. Let's break it down. And all the way when we got to the end, we're talking like 250,000 podcasts that are probably sending out an episode every week. So less intimidating, right? When you put it that way. But then also I like the book analogy because it's just content and a vehicle for you to tell your personal story. And who wouldn't want that, right? Who wouldn't want that? So yeah, I think it's just a way that people can frame it and look at it through that lens so that they don't use that excuse to start.
No, it's huge. And think of all the different topics out there, right? There's so many topics, and the odds of somebody, the competition even further divides down into those who are about your topic and your audience. And the interesting thing about podcasts that I've seen, throughout the years, and I've been running my podcast, I guess this is our second year. Maybe it's been over 1.5 years, but going on close to 2 years, is your best clients, your best strategic partners are the ones who have listened to your podcast because they feel like they know you. They've been with you. They understand the way you think, and they like that, and they connect with that. It resonates with them. Maybe you talk about more things than just whatever, work, business, etc., and you build that personal brand up. And I thought one of the more interesting things, and I know you do this in your podcasts, and you certainly, help your clients understand this, is telling some of the personal stuff and how that resonates with people. And one of the most powerful personal, stories I've ever heard of that resonates with people was at that event when you were talking about this crazy story that you and your wife went through. And time is kind of running short here, but tell us a little bit about that story, and even how kind of that had an effect on maybe your personal brand, and certainly the way you look at life, and just how important it is to share real things and not just always, perfectly curated content, but hey, this is real. This is what happened to me. This is what I'm going through.
Yeah. I can attempt to tell the story, Leo. I know we're pressed for time here. And you saw the way I tell it. I'm very animated. I can't keep still. The cameramen were like, dude, it was so hard to keep track of you. I was running back and forth on that stage, telling the story about the birth of my second born, Natalie, on the side of the road. So spoiler alert, that is what happened. And I just talk about it. I walk us through the journey from waking up, at 6:30 in the morning, to my wife mumbling into the phone in the bathroom. Like, I didn't know who she was talking to, but then she came out and she was like, don't worry, everything's cool. Just, pack and take your time. But that was the opposite of what I should have been doing. And, ended up, we had to get in the car and we had to hurry down to through the hospital. I was literally like Fast and the Furious, cutting cars off and weaving in and out of traffic and passing semis on the right shoulder. Like, that's super dangerous. And when I realized that we potentially wouldn't make it was when I saw out of the corner of my eye, she was pulling her pants down, and I was like, oh, it's go time, Leo. I gotta make something happen here. I found out later that there's a lot of guys who don't pull over or stop. Like, they continue driving when that happens. And then the babies just plop into the dirty freaking car mats. That was never really an option to me. I didn't play all this out of my head. I was just going with instinct. But the one thing that I like to share is the seconds that it took to run around that car. felt like 25 minutes to me. Everything was moving in slow motion. Everything was bullet time. And, cars are driving by. I could literally see the faces. I still remember. I'm like, oh, she looks like a doctor. Or I was looking up at the house that I was parked in front of. I was like, I bet they have like hot water and like clean towels. And, I could call 911. And then I realized, oh, I got a phone. I don't need 911. I can call them and they were on their way. But the funny thing about it was, when the paramedics and the police came, and I had caught Natalie, on one knee, as I told you, from the stage, and she slid into my arms, and she was all happy and healthy and breathing. The police came and they celebrated me, not my wife. They took care of her, but they practically lifted me on their shoulders, like, for he's a jolly good fellow, and handed me a chalice and a goblet. Yeah. Yeah, with a cigar in my mouth, and then like it hit the news. It was all over the world. Like people were calling me from the Philippines, and I was like, "What is going on?" I'm like, "I'm just here celebrating the birth of my child. Why is everybody calling me?" Because it was on the news, even in like New York City, where I'm from. So, it was an interesting experience. It became part of my story. I appreciate telling it from the stage, just because I get that opportunity to share it the way I do. It's difficult. I've done it on podcasts before, but it's harder. But yeah, if you have a story, so the point is, one of the things, if you give me a second to share what I wanted to break down,
please share it with
during
us.
And not necessarily here, because I wasn't, in my element of telling this story, but there's an acronym that I follow here, and that is CAR, coincidentally, because I was driving in a car. But when you're telling stories and you want to frame a story in a way that's very engaging, what we want to do is the first thing, which is C, is context and color, like create that atmosphere. So I did that really quickly here, like being in the bed, 6:30 in the morning, my wife's on the phone, and kind of like paint the picture for people, put them in the situation with you so that they feel something, right? Because that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to evoke emotion. We want people to connect and resonate. That's why we love movies, right? It makes you feel something, sad, happy, all the emotions. So what we're doing is doing that through the story. And also, when you're telling stories, please keep in mind that your voice is an instrument. It's a saxophone, it's a violin. There's ways that you can do highs and lows and like, anger and sadness and joy, like use those pitches, right? Be very aware when the camera is on. They always say it adds 10 pounds. Well, it sucks 10 degrees of energy from you. So you have to sort of exaggerate. It feels weird, but exaggerate your energy levels. It's going to come off very well for you if you do that. It's going to feel weird, but I highly recommend doing it. So then there's the A, where it's the action, paint the picture, right? I was driving through there, weaving in the car, going around semis, like there's the action piece of it. So create some action and suspense for your story. And then the R is the results. Like, how did the hero win at the end? What was the gain? And for me, it was the gain. The win was the birth of my daughter, Natalie, who we named after the road, by the way. So she was born on North Post and Ward. So her name is Natalie Ward Cabral. So
wow, that's great.
Yeah,
just such an epic story, man.
But yeah, thanks for letting me share that, brother. I appreciate it.
No, thanks for sharing that. I just love that story, and it accentuates the importance to be authentic, to share not just business but personal, and that's where you're going to connect. And when you can connect emotionally with somebody, like that's the decisions we make, right? We want to think, especially as entrepreneurs and business owners, that we're 100% logical. We make all these, analytical decisions that lead to perfect logical and outcomes that we are destined to. But a lot of times there's some emotion backing it, and there certainly is for most buying decisions. And I think at the end of the day, when people are thinking about, well, who do I want to learn from? It is also that person that we like, know, trust, who entertains, who has, a personal story, a personal brand, and they connect with us in that emotional way. And that makes us want to, dang, I like this Erik. I want to learn more from him. I want to follow him. I like his story. I like that he's a father. He's a husband. He's real. I mean, I've got 5 kids. We didn't deliver any of them on the side of the road. I don't know how I would have done on that. And I don't know how my wife would have done on that. So I'm, big props to you and your wife, because that is absolutely amazing. I still can't. I don't know if I can fathom that, but
you would have been fine. I'm sure you would have done exactly what I did.
Oh, yeah, no question. So at the end of the day, we're all pursuing this thing called financial freedom. Why do we need it, and how do you define it?
For me, financial freedom, brother, is truly not being overly concerned with paying the bills, not being concerned with so much growth. Like you're good. Like if money were to stop now, you'd be fine, right? Everything's paid for, your family's taken care of. That's because you have enough investments and you have enough opportunities around you that pay for your base, that pay for the foundation of everything, saying mortgage, car payments, food, like the basic necessities are all taken care of. And it's a lot less intimidating when you break it down. Like I highly recommend anyone who's listening who hasn't done this, what is your annual nut? How much do you spend a year? So my wife and I did this when I left corporate. I was like, what do we actually need to survive and live? So we're blessed. We're in, paint the picture, white picket fence, suburbia, 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2 kids, 2 cars. That's enough, right? We don't need anything more than that. I don't need a yacht. I don't need, a mansion. So when we broke it down, brother, it was $87K a year. That was it. I was like, okay, that's my goal. I'm going to create enough passive investment, meaning I'm not active in any of these investments. They make money while I sleep. That is financial freedom. When you can accomplish your annual nut is covered by your passive investments, whether it's stock, whether it could be a lot of different things, right? For us, it's a lot of different things. But if you can do that, that's financial freedom, brother. It took a long time to sell it, but that's my definition.
I completely agree. It's when you've got the basics covered, you're not worrying, you're not going to the grocery store with a calculator, and you have control where if money stopped, you've got passive income coming in. And I 100% agree with you. I mean, it's passive income from cash flow real estate properties that provides the best freedom, coupled with some recurring revenue, hopefully that you can build cash flow streams in your business as well. And those are the two things that create freedom. Well, Erik, I know a lot of people, and we always tell the audience, this is not a passive podcast. This is an active, take action, implement what you learn podcast. So what is the next step that someone can take today? Where can they go specifically to connect with you, to learn how to build a personal brand, to learn how to implement podcasting, to have a chance to create financial freedom for them and their family? What's the next step that they can take today?
Yeah, brother. So I have something for your audience, and I also share this with the BDC community, is my website. If you go to Erik, Erik Cabral, CABRAL.co/guide. So ericcabral.co/guide. I do have an opportunity for anyone, whether you're a podcaster or not. I think it's relevant for you to read this 2-page document that is all the tips and all the lessons that I learned how to speak on a podcast, either side of the mic. So I recommend that's a really good start for anyone out there, especially if you have no intention of starting a podcast. Read this and see, oh, maybe I can just guest on shows. And that's a wonderful way to sort of dip your toe in the water.
Guys, that's Erik, Erik Cabral, CABRAL.co/guide. I downloaded this when I was listening to Erik live. You better believe I did. It's the 21 plus tips to go from podcast smo to podcast pro, and so many amazing tips to build your personal brand. And it's these types of actions that set you apart from the competition, that endear you to your dream clients, your dream strategic partners that you want to work with. So that's the action. Be active, implement, go to ericcabral.co/guide, download this, take action. He's got amazing content on his website, but more importantly, this document is going to help position you to build your empire and to create financial freedom. Erik, thank you for sharing your stories, your professionalism, and your expertise on the 7 Figures Club podcast today.
Are you looking for more 7-figure secrets, content, or even how you can launch your own recession-proof business? then check out 7figures.com. That's the digit 7figures.com, where we share more videos, stories, strategies, funding solutions, entrepreneurial education, and even the secret business type that's recession-proof. Thank you for listening, and if you're finding value in our podcast, please give us a 5-star and invite others to join the club.